Hey guys, Metal Viking 82 here, back with part 2 of my top 40 releases of 2022. Again, a lot of killer stuff that was put out this past year, and yeah, I got a lot of cool stuff to get through, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Starting things off, we have Immolation with Acts of God. Yeah, these guys are pretty much legends of the death metal scene, and this their 11th album. With this, their 11th album, excuse me, they have added yet another entry into a catalog that honestly doesn't have any bad releases in it, in my opinion. Vigna's, guitar work as usual is just solid. Shalady's drumming is just insane, and Ross's bass and vocals are as badass as ever. This is a rather lengthy album, but it actually flows so nicely that you don't really notice how long it actually is. To sum it up, like many others I've seen say, it's immolation. I mean, that's all you can say. It's immolation. Next up, Writhing Shadows with their self-titled. Yeah, Birmingham, Alabama's Writhing Shadows came to my attention when they appeared on Crypt Fest over at Ken's Death Metal Crypt, and I have been a fan ever since, getting whatever I possibly can from this band. And with their debut album here, you get heavy as fuck and just primitive old school death metal with thick, dirty sounding bass, crunchy guitars, lots of blast beats, and just absolutely killer growls. Definitely a strong debut from an absolutely amazing band, and I look forward to hearing more from them as the years progress. Next up, actually, the next couple are going to be some Texas brutality here, starting with Desecrate the Faith with 3. Yeah, Texas death metal is honestly some of the best around, in my honest opinion, and these guys prove why that is. After much delay, they were finally able to unleash their third album upon us, featuring the last contributions of Marvin Ruiz, who plays in the band that I will be talking about here in just a second. But yeah, just killer, heavy as balls riffs, and some really powerful growls just all over this CD. And while it is pretty lengthy, much like Immolations, it is hardly noticeable. It is, as it really is, well written and executed. Definitely an absolute banger of an album. Go check out Desecrate the Faith. Next up, Stabbing with Extirpated Mortal Process. Again, more Texas brutality here. 2021's demo and EP releases really blew me away and made me a big fan of this 4-piece from the Austin and Houston areas of Texas. Heavy, chuggy riffs from Marvin, who I get mentioned in the Desecrate the Faith album here. Killer blast beats and just low, guttural growls, courtesy of Bridget, who could not only hang with the big boys, but put a lot of them to shame, in my honest opinion. The only thing with this album is I really wish Meryl's bass will be higher up in the mix, as she has a really good tone and provides a really good backbone to all these songs, but I just wish you could hear it a lot more and it would come, be heard more in the mix. But other than that, absolutely killer album. Next up, Corpse Grinder with the self-titled. Debut solo album from, as you can obviously tell, the Cannibal Corpse frontman, and what you get is just pure death metal with hardcore elements to it. Great guitar work, thick twangy bass, solid drums, with some really nice double bass work on here, and his vocals sound as great as ever. It is really cool hearing Eric Rutan guest on opener, Acid Vat, and honestly, this album is just one of those ones that is just great to put on and just headbang to. Really good stuff, in my honest opinion. Next up, this album here, Absent in Body with Plague God. Now, this album got a lot of hype upon its release, and honestly, after I heard it, it definitely lived up to all of it. This is creepy and doomy with these dissonant guitars, thick bass, and then Igor Cavalera from Sepultura fame. He does the drums on here and turns in a really solid performance, I thought. There's also some industrial elements all over this thing, and topped by vocals that range from growls that kind of have a behemoth vibe to them to these maniacal shouts. I definitely need to hear more people talk about this album and hear this, because like I said, it got a lot of hype when it was released, but you don't hear too many talk about this. But this is just such an unsettling album to listen to, but I absolutely love it. Next up, Fetal Blood Eagle with Indoctrinate. Yet another international act featuring Sven from Aborted on vocals, though this time this one is firmly planted in the realms of death metal. Heavy, chuggy grooves, even some kind of noodly riffs, as I like to call them, with really great guitar solos, thick, kind of techy sounding bass, powerful drums. I really love the double bass that gets really super fast at times on here, and honestly, Sven's vocals sound as great as ever. Just an absolutely solid album. I hope he actually ends up putting out more with this project. I mean, you can't get enough Sven, in my opinion. Next up, Grand Belial's Key with Kohonic Charmers. This one took a little time to find a copy of, but I'm really glad I did. This is the fourth album from this really well-known Virginia-based black metal act, excuse me, and it is just full of great guitar work with that old school black metal tone with some really nice tremolos, thick bass that's easily heard, providing a good backbone to all these songs, and just solid drums with some nice double bass work and a really great snap to the snare. I love the vocals on this thing as they get absolutely nasty at times, but definitely one of the best black metal releases I heard in 2022. Next up, Undeath with It's Time to Rise from the Grave. People seem to want to shit on this band, and I don't know why. This album is just full of heavy Cannibal Corpse-ish guitars, thick bass, powerful drums with some great double bass work, and just powerful and yet intelligible growls on here. There's just headbang ability galore all over this album, and this is just a certified banger in my honest opinion, and I just don't get the hate. I know Chris Barnes is definitely not a fan. Next up, Yatra, Born into Chaos. This band here just whooped my ass at Heavy Hell 3, and so did this album. You get crunchy guitars with some great solos on here, solid drumming, and just thick, rumbling bass, giving it all a really solid backbone, topped by these vicious, snarled vocals. Definitely a band to keep an eye on, and if you ever get a chance to see them live, I would highly recommend that you do so. All right. Moving on to the next pile, the last 10. And again, these are in no kind of order. These are not ranked anyway. This is just how I happen to write everything down. So, all right. Next up, Escuela Grind with Memory Theater. Another band that absolutely kicked my ass at Heavy Hell 3. This New York-based band's game is pure grindcore and power violence. Heavy as fuck riffing with some serious Mortician vibes to it. Thick as hell bass, lots of blast beats, and the vicious vocals of Katarina. This band is just solid, not only on the album, but live as well. I mean, Katarina is just an absolute mad woman on stage. She is short but mighty, and this album just whoops ass. Go check out Escuela Grind. Oh, this one. Woo, love it. Tribal Gaze with the Nine Choirs. This honestly is easily one of the heaviest albums I heard in 2022. Thick as fuck bass, heavy, crunchy guitars with some Cannibal Corpse feel to them at times, and chugs that just make you go, oh. And, you know, when you're listening to this album, you'll do that a lot. You'll just hear a riff and you're just like, oh, yes. Powerful, thunderous drums, The bass work on here is, like I said, thick as fuck, and just absolutely killer vocals over the top. And again, another great example of Texas brutality at its finest. Go check these guys out if you have not already. Next up, Molder, Engrossed in Decay. This Illinois-based Death Thrash Act's second album is just a heavy, nasty affair with lots of headbangable moments to be found here. Thrashy riffs, thick, twangy bass, solid drums, and some very Van Drunen-ish style vocals. Great band. Really chill dudes. I met them at Heavy Hell 3. They kicked ass live as well. And like I said, they were some of the nicest guys to talk to. And they released an absolute banger of an album. Go check out Molder. Next up, Elysian with Damnum. This Colorado-based technical death metal act released their 6th album this past year, and the last one to feature Riley McShane on vocals. Heavy tone guitars with some fast riffs, and even some kind of almost like flamenco style playing as well. Thick bass on this thing, lots of nice double bass and blast beats, and just absolutely killer vocals. Even some clean vocals make an appearance on here. And who could forget the solos on this thing? There's so many great guitar solos. Probably my favorite track on here is probably the one that you hear the most on Liquid Metal, and that is Of Beasts and Worms. Great song and a really good album. Next up, another one that I've seen on a lot of people's lists, and with good reason. This is Revocation with Nether Heaven. 8th album from these Bostonian tech death thrashers, and man, the riffs on this thing. It's heavy yet melodic with great solos, and all around it's got some catchiness to it and headbang ability. Solid, powerful drums with great blast beats, heavy sounding bass, and just badass vocals, which actually include guest vocalist Corpse Grinder and the late great Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder in one of, I believe, his last vocal performances. Rest in power. This album is so damn good. If you've not heard it yet, you got to go hear it. Alrighty, getting down to it. Next up, Mortuous with Upon Desolation. The second album from this California-based band is pure old-school death metal with a definite Morbid Angel vibe to it. Powerful drums. Just listen to that snare. Such a good snare sound that they got on here with some really nice blast beats. Thick, dirty-sounding bass. Fast-paced riffs with some more mid-paced chugs. And just powerful low-end growls. A definite banger of an album. Definitely one of my favorites. Next up, Phobophilic with Enveloping Absurdity. Another Crypt Fest discovery for me, and on their debut full-length, these Fargo-based death metalers offer up old-school death metal with heavy, dirty-sounding guitars hitting you with mid-paced chugs with some faster-paced riffs, bass that is equally dirty and thick, solid drums with some great blast beats, and just low growls. Once again, an absolute banger. Next up, Goatwhore with Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven. This is the 8th album from this NOLA-based band, and it is an absolutely savage affair. And honestly, I think this is some of Sammy's best riff work yet. You get really fast riffing with the perfect blend of black metal and death metal heft, thick bass, killer drums with lots of tasty blast beats, and Ben's vocals sound as great as ever. So many good songs on here, and I really want to catch these guys live again at some point. It'd be kind of cool to meet these guys, but yeah, they released an absolutely amazing album. Go check this out. Next up, Ghost with Impera. Yes, the band that everyone loves to hate, but I have just been a big fan since their first album, and their last several were hit and miss, definitely. But honestly, out of their last several, this is probably, in my opinion, the best of the bunch. I enjoy this album so much. I listened to it, I don't know how many times. It's just hooky and catchy with just so many great songs. I mean, you got stuff like Kaisaren, Spillways, Call Me Little Sunshine. One of my personal favorites, Hunter's Moon, Darkness at the Heart of My Love, and my probably definitive favorite track on this album, Watchers in the Sky. That chorus is just so damn catchy and so melodic and hooky. I absolutely love it. Great album from this band. Like I said, people love to hate on them, but I've always loved these guys, so yeah. All right, last but most certainly not least, again, as I said earlier, I did not rank these, much like I've said in all my other videos. But this right here, if I was ranking it, would be my number one album. This is probably one of my most listened to albums ever since I got the promo for it and picked up the CD and everything. I was at the CD release party. They kicked ass live, my first time seeing them. And these guys are just a bunch of great guys. And honestly, anybody that knows me, this should come as really no surprise what my number one album of 2022 is. And that is Mother of Graves, Where the Shadows Adorn. I absolutely adore this album. I really do. Like I said, I've listened to this. I couldn't tell you how many times. It is one of my most listened to albums. In fact, on my way home, the last day I worked before Christmas, I actually hooked up my phone to my truck through Bluetooth and played this because the weather outside was just perfect for this album, and it struck me as great as I did the very first time I listened to it. It's somber, it's melodic, it's heavy, it's so full of emotions, and you hear Brandon's vocal performance, and you can just tell that this is such a cathartic release for him, and that these lyrics are so personal. If you want a full in-depth thought on this album, just go check out my review for it. But yeah, number one album for me of 2022, Mother of Graves. If you have not done yourself a favor and listened to this, go check it out right now. These guys deserve your support. I am anxiously awaiting what they have in store. They've been saying they've actually already started working on stuff for the next one, and I am beyond stoked to hear what they've come up with. So yeah, that is going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. And until next time, stay brutal.